Hello and welcome to Math World. In this episode we are going to learn about independent versus dependent variables. So basically the foundation of algebra I think is relationships between two things. We just want to continually compare two things, two quantities or two variables. The most common one is usually hours and money. So if I paid you $5 an hour, you have dollars and hours. The more hours you work, the more dollars you get. So you see we're comparing dollars and hours. That's what we're going to be doing in algebra pretty much every single time. Comparing two different things. Once we have two things we want to compare, we got to figure out which one is independent and which one is dependent. So let's say I pay you $5 per hour. Which one do you think is independent and which one do you think is dependent? Well, just like the word suggests, dependent, the dependent variable depends on the independent. So, which one of these variables, dollars versus hours, depends on the other? Do your hours depend on how much money you make? Or does the amount of money you make depend on the hours? I believe it's the second one. Dollars earned depends on the hours you worked. We're going to do a couple different examples in class comparing two different things, and each time we're going to think about which one depends on the other. It's important because we're going to eventually graph these things. It's important because we're going to put one of them as the x variable along the bottom of our graph and the other one as the y variable. The independent is the x while the dependent is the y. So if you already have a graph, you can tell that the independent is down here. The independent is always down here, while the dependent is always up here. If you don't already have a graph, well then you need to figure it out and put the variables where they belong. Which one was independent? The hours. The hours came first, then the dollars. Another way to help you out is that the independent variable is always the one that you choose, the one that you have some control over. You choose how many hours you want to work. The more hours you work, the more money you make. The less hours you work, the less money you make. So the one that you kind of control is the independent. And then the dependent variable depends on what you choose. The more hours we work, the more dollars we make. And as we get further into algebra, we'll start comparing different things, like the time that you walk and the distance you travel. Time and distance are very popular to compare. Well, that's it, and I'll see you in class.
Hey class, it's Mr. Bigsby with a hat, and I've got a challenge question for you. Alright, so whenever I travel around or visit a new city, I always notice that there's a McDonald's at every single city. And I just moved to Annapolis, and there's 2 McDonald's on my street. So I was thinking, I wonder if there's a relationship between the size of a city, or maybe its population, how many people live there, and the number of McDonald's that are in the city. So I want to kind of like collect data about population and all their McDonald's that are in that city. So I got to decide which one of these is the independent variable and which one is the dependent. Which variable depends on the other? Help me out and leave me the answer in the comments. If you want a hint, check this out. Woo, real fast. Later. Now for a word from our sponsor, Papercut Games. This week's game, Love Letter Batman theme. So Love Letter is an old game, but they've changed it by throwing on a kind of Batman skin to it, and it works perfectly. So in this little tiny card game, there's only about 16 cards. The goal is to play Batman cards to catch the villains like Catwoman and Bane and even the Joker. But you can also win by playing villain cards that maybe knock out Batman, or if you're the last person standing with one of the highest cards like Harley Quinn, Two-Face, or Joker, you can also win. The game goes by really quick and everyone who I've played with really enjoys it. So I think you should check out Love Letter Batman. I'm Mr. Bixby and I approve this message.